Over 2,000 names, one shared message. Tonight, a growing wave of people is refusing to let Yu Menglong's story fade into silence. And what's happening online right now is turning grief into something far bigger. A coordinated call for clarity, dignity, and truth. But here's the question everyone keeps asking. If this was truly a straightforward incident, why are so many people still left with the feeling that key pieces don't add up? Stay with me, because in this update, we'll break down what's fueling the petition, why the public mood keeps intensifying, and the new ways supporters are choosing to honor Yu Menglong without crossing the line into harmful rumors. What we are seeing at this moment is not simply another update in a celebrity story. It is a clear shift in how people are choosing to respond to uncertainty. Reports of a petition gaining momentum, with thousands adding their names, signal that public attention has not moved on. If anything, it has matured into something steadier. A collective insistence that the end of a life should not be reduced to a few lines and then forgotten. For many supporters, signing is not an attempt to play detective or to replace an investigation. It is a way of stating, calmly but firmly, that the public still feels emotionally unfinished. In the digital era, grief doesn't stay private. It becomes organized, recorded, and shared. Communities form quickly, not only to mourn, but to keep the memory of someone intact while the official story feels too thin for the size of the loss. There's also a deeper reason the momentum matters. It reflects a quiet demand for dignity. People are not only asking what happened, they're also asking, will this be handled with care? A petition, at its best, is a reminder that a human life deserves more than a conclusion that leaves people unsettled. Whether the petition changes anything formally is unknown. What it has already changed is the public's sense of connection, turning isolated grief into a shared, disciplined presence that continues to watch, remember, and ask for clarity without losing compassion. Some stories fade because time moves on. This one keeps returning because it contains a tension the human mind struggles to tolerate. The gap between an official ending and an emotional reality that still feels unresolved. Many viewers remember Yu Menglong through an image of steadiness, someone perceived as gentle, professional, and quietly resilient. That impression sits uncomfortably beside a narrative that to many seems too abrupt, too final, too clean for the weight of public grief. When people sense a gap, they fill it, not necessarily with truth, often with questions, patterns, and possibilities. That is how loops begin online. Someone shares a clip, another shares a timeline, another recalls an interview or a habit, and suddenly the audience is not only watching, but participating. The story becomes interactive, not because it should be, but because uncertainty invites involvement. This is also why the conversation becomes global. You do not need to be a longtime fan to understand the core feeling. When a public figure dies and the explanation feels incomplete, the public instinctively seeks coherence. It is not simply curiosity. It is a desire to restore order to something that feels senseless. And there is another layer. People fear silence. They fear that if attention drops, questions will never be addressed, and the memory will be left unprotected. So they return again and again, not always to chase rumors, but to make sure the person at the center of the story is not lost beneath noise. In that sense, the pull is emotional, moral, and deeply human. A petition is easy to dismiss if you treat it like paperwork, but in moments like this, it functions less as a legal instrument and more as a moral signal. It tells the world that people are still paying attention, that grief has not dissolved, and that questions have not been quietly packed away. For many who sign, the act is not about declaring certainty. It is about refusing to accept emotional erasure. In modern public life, attention is power, not the loud, chaotic kind, but the steady kind that refuses to be distracted. A petition gathers that attention into something visible, a number, a list, a shared statement. Each name, whether real or anonymous, is a small declaration of presence. It says, I saw this, I care. I want clarity handled with dignity. This matters because the online world can be cruelly fleeting. People trend today and disappear tomorrow. The petition pushes back against that pattern. It does not claim to solve the case. Instead, it creates a public record of concern, which can act as protection against silence, indifference, or premature closure. There is also a psychological truth here. When people cannot change outcomes directly, they reach for actions that restore agency. Signing becomes a way to transform helplessness into participation. Even if it changes nothing formally, it changes the signer. It gives grief a shape, a place to stand, a sense of solidarity. At its healthiest, the petition is not an accusation machine. It is a reminder that a life can be honored through insistence on care, transparency, and restraint. It says the public does not want spectacle. They want respect for the truth and for the person at the center of the story. One of the most meaningful shifts is that many supporters are beginning to separate remembrance from rumor. Instead of feeding a cycle of speculation, parts of the community are trying to build something more stable, a culture of responsible grief. This change matters because it protects both the integrity of the conversation and the dignity of Yu Menglong's legacy. A growing number of fans are creating structured archives, not expose threads, but careful collections of publicly available information, clearly labeled by certainty. Verified reports are kept distinct from unverified claims. Dates, screenshots, and quotes are stored with context. The goal is not to pressure anyone into a narrative, but to prevent misinformation from becoming the loudest voice. Others are focusing on what might be called legacy work, restoring the human being behind the headlines. They share moments that show kindness, professionalism, and humility. The small behaviors that rarely trend, but define character. In doing so, they shift the question from what drama happened to who was he, really, and why did people care? That is a powerful form of protection. There's also a noticeable rise in collective self-discipline. Some groups are encouraging what they call clean support. No harassment, no naming private individuals without evidence, no pressure on family members, no invasive content. The message is simple. Justice and cruelty cannot live in the same hands. Finally, new community rituals are emerging. Memory streams, scheduled quiet hours of respectful tribute, charitable fundraising in his name, and projects that highlight mental resilience and compassion. These actions turn grief into care. They show that a fandom can grow up, transforming from a loud crowd into a steady community that honors someone through restraint, empathy, and enduring attention. If you want ongoing updates delivered with care, respect, and clear storytelling, please subscribe to Update X24SOH. Thank you for watching, and thank you for keeping the conversation humane. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode. And as always, take care of yourself and the people you love.